You wake up on the freezing dirt floor of the pitch-black frontier bunkhouse. A 250-pound, heavily armed cattle rustler is sleeping inches away from your face. But he isn't reaching for his revolver. He is methodically stroking your thigh. Welcome to the Wild West. Hollywood desperately wants you to believe this era was entirely populated by stoic heroes saving schoolteachers and riding into the sunset. You are being fed a sanitized lie built to protect a fragile ego. The reality? You have walked into a sprawling, hyper-isolated, deeply traumatized bachelor society. It is the 1880s. Your brutal 2,000-mile journey promised a better life. But instead, you reach a filthy mining camp, where the gender ratio is 100 men to 1 woman. You quickly realize society hasn't just adapted to this extreme isolation. It has completely snapped. Isolate thousands of emotionally stunted men in a desert for years, and the rules of masculinity don't just bend, they violently break. You push the heavy saloon doors open into a suffocating wave of cigar smoke, spilled whiskey, and unwashed denim. An out-of-tune piano bangs in the corner. But instead of lone wolves blowing off steam, you watch 200 heavily armed, bearded men aggressively waltzing. It is a stag dance. For one dangerously naive second, you think it's a progressive queer nightclub. Absolutely not. You realize this isn't acceptance. It is a highly regulated, deeply humiliating biological coping mechanism. You notice half the men on the dance floor have a flour sack tied tightly around their bicep, or a bright bandana wrapped around their head. That piece of cloth is a state-mandated social tag. It designates that, for the next 3 minutes, the wearer is legally considered a woman. You must tie a dirty rag around your arm, just so the 250-pound prospector spinning you around the room doesn't feel his fragile frontier masculinity is threatened. You are forced to participate in a socially acceptable delusion for men terrified of their own desires. You plaster a fake smile on your face until your jaw aches. You let massive, sweaty men with horrific breath and loaded shotguns crush your leather boots while they whisper clumsy, drunken compliments. You become a breathing biological accessory for a society that will refuse to look you in the eye when the sun comes up. Because you know the stag dance is just the appetizer. Your real horror starts when the music stops, the saloon closes, and your survival on the grueling cattle trail begins. You think keeping a low profile, panning for gold, and wrangling angry cattle for 15 hours a day seems like a solid plan. You try to ignore the underlying tension. You try to be a lone wolf. But in the frontier ecosystem, you are a young, attractive, unclaimed guy. You are a walking piece of public property. You realize remaining a free agent invites every grimy drifter to test your boundaries in the blind spot of the canyon. Panic sets in. You know surviving alone is mathematically impossible. You need a partner. You officially begin the unthinkable audition process for a monster. Scanning the camp, your target becomes obvious. The man with the most scars who scares the absolute hell out of everyone else. The crew foreman. He is a massive, leather-skinned brute who solves disagreements by relocating people's teeth. You walk up to his campfire without flirting. You simply offer to split your coffee ration. He looks up. His eyes drop aggressively to your waistline. He takes your tin cup. Congratulations. You have just initiated a legally binding, completely non-consensual frontier marriage. But here is the absolute, mind-bending psychological twist that makes your new domestic reality so uniquely horrifying. You actually need him. Because being claimed by one violent outlaw is the absolute only thing stopping 50 other violent outlaws from hunting you down. He isn't just your abuser. He is your boyfriend, your sheriff, and your only active life insurance policy. You know rejecting him means his casual whisper about a deviant will trigger permanent frontier justice from the nearest oak tree. That monster is the only thing keeping your lungs inflating. So when the camp goes to sleep and the freezing wind rattles the thin wooden boards of your bunkhouse, you pay the price for that protection. You realize negotiation does not exist. Personal space is a myth. You are never asked for consent. You must perform your duties in the suffocating dark with total, unquestioning enthusiasm. You know laying there like a dead fish insults his fragile cowboy ego, resulting in your savage, career-ending accident during tomorrow's stampede. You bite your lips to muffle the sound. You follow his orders exactly. You allow that unwashed, scarred man to shatter every psychological boundary. You dissociate so hard that your own middle name fades into the howling prairie wind. You turn your mind into a compliant, hypersexualized ghost just to survive the night. You accept it as the horrific cost of doing business in the West. You pay your rent strictly with your dignity. And then the physical act ends. Your bunkhouse is still pitch black, and the dynamic instantly, violently flips. He pulls your head against his heavy chest, gently stroking your hair. For 2 hours, you listen to the foreman whisper about wanting to buy a quiet little peach orchard in Oregon. He complains the other cowboys don't respect his feelings. He cries quietly over a childhood dog. The hardened, violent outlaw who just violated every physical boundary you have is now a wounded, clingy, emotional wreck, asking you to hold him. And you wrap your arms around him, because you have to. You must provide deeply emotional, domestic intimacy to a clinical sociopath. You are trapped in a non-consensual honeymoon, and your bedroom is a dirt floor surrounded by snoring men who would shoot to kill if they lit a lantern. You wash his long johns in the freezing river. You save him the best piece of salted pork. You mend the bullet holes in his canvas jacket, becoming the perfect, traumatized frontier wife. You learn the twisted, unspoken rules. You forbid yourself from making eye contact with rivals, and you only speak when spoken to. You manage the unpredictable mood swings of a man who sleeps with a six-shooter under his pillow. Years go by. Your long cattle trails finally end. The gold veins dry up. You transition into booming, permanent cities like San Francisco, and it feels like a victory. You finally have actual walls, a locked door, a real bed. But you find the cities are an entirely different kind of psychological meat grinder. Yeah! While your isolated camps were a lawless free-for-all, the cities operate as a highly regulated, brutally efficient extortion market. You realize the illusion of blending in with crowds of miners and merchants is just that, an illusion. The local authorities aren't blind. They are just waiting for your arrangement to become profitable. The exact moment you sign a boarding house lease with another man, you paint a massive invisible target on your front door. You and your partner become the ultimate financial piñata for the local shadow economy. You learn blackmail is a massive industry here, and your apartment is prime real estate. A local deputy catches you leaving a private bathhouse at the wrong time of night. He makes no arrests. He just tips his expensive felt hat, warning that your monthly protection fee just tripled. You are suddenly required to work 70-hour weeks in a dangerous silver mine just to hand your paycheck to a corrupt lawman. A lawman who threatens to print your explicit bedroom habits on the front page of the newspaper if you are even one day late on a payment. You are trapped in a terrifying high-stakes extortion loop. You can't go to the police when they are the ones holding the metaphorical gun to your head. You realize fleeing town just means the deputy wires the sheriff in the next territory to pick up your collection account. Your sexuality isn't an identity here. It is a highly taxable offense. And then, just when you think you understand the cynical rules of the game, the entire game board is violently flipped upside down. The 1890s arrive. The Transcontinental Railroad finally connects the coasts, bringing a terrifying new predator to your frontier, the East Coast politician. You watch trains unload wealthy Victorian moralists who look at the muddy bachelor societies of the West and aggressively clutch their pearls. They decide it is time to civilize the frontier, and their specific version of civilization means methodically, legally deleting you from existence. Overnight, you see city councils pass sweeping, aggressive local ordinances. Wearing clothes that do not match your assigned gender becomes a literal crime. Saloon entertainers and anyone relying on the fluid presentation that kept you alive during stag dances are suddenly targets. You watch men wearing new silver badges begin physically dragging people off the streets. The exact same deputies who extorted you in the dark alleys are now wearing crisp suits and building political careers on the hunt. Your trap snaps completely shut. You realize society happily extracted your cheap labor to build their towns and lay their iron tracks. But the exact second the town gets a brick mayor's office and a church, your existence is violently classified as a threat to public decency. You are forced completely underground. You replace normal conversation with frantic coded whispers. You memorize backdoor alley escape routes for every saloon. You sit in a dim, gaslit room, nursing a watered-down whiskey, constantly scanning the front door. Every single time the wooden floorboards creak, your heart rate spikes to 180 beats per minute. You wait for the heavy, synchronized boots of the newly formed Vice Squad. You wait for the inevitable violent raid that will end in a freezing jail cell, your public humiliation, and your total, irreversible financial ruin. Through the dirty glass window, you watch wealthy politicians stand on the balcony across the street. They are giving grand, sweeping speeches about frontier freedom, rugged individualism, and the great American liberty. And the darkest, most twisted joke of the entire era becomes crystal clear to you. The Wild West was never wild. It was a perfectly designed machine built to extract your labor, exploit your sexuality in the shadows, and then legally discard you when you asked to exist in the light. Hiding inside a town built by your own bare hands, your mere presence is now considered a felony. The piano abruptly stops playing. The heavy saloon doors violently swing open. A man with a silver star on his chest steps inside, holding a piece of paper with your exact name on it, and your heart stops. You survive it. You endure it. But you never, ever escape it.